Is this where we need to talk transfer portal?
I think so. And I've been thinking about this a lot today because, sorry to steal your thunder there, Ole Miss added another transfer portal addition today. They got an edge, if you will, from TCU. So not a traditional defensive end. He's more of like linebacker size, but he'll play on the outside. He'll rush the passer. Had a really good freshman campaign, was actually co-defensive freshman of the year with Aisheem Young, who also transferred to Ole Miss from Iowa State. Last year battled injuries, only had 4 starts. But he's a significant pickup in a position of need. They need to get after the passer with Sam Williams' absence. Now they got a guy with 2 years of Power 5 film, and you know that he can come in and contribute because you've seen it at the Power 5 level. Just another addition. The school, Lane Kiffin and company, have absolutely cleaned up in the transfer portal. They have added impact players at positions of desperate need. The text line, my gosh. I
will never look at the fajita mitt the same way again. That's from Scott in South Tillow.
We just ruined some of your Taco Tuesdays, but anyway.
Go ahead, Borky.
So they've
transfer portal.
Ole Miss got a player.
They have added instant impact players at basically every position of need, and they're not done. I mean, the estimation is they're going to add at least one more wide receiver, possibly another defensive tackle, another offensive lineman, maybe more secondary help. I mean, they're not done, and it's the best transfer haul in the country. And here's what I've been thinking about, because I had somebody in the comments of one of my videos say they don't like this because Ole Miss should build on Mississippi players, and that's how they'll be successful. And I don't know how many people actually think like that. But here's how I would respond to that and how I did respond to that. And I'll bring it here to the radio show. Why? Show your work. Ole Miss will only be successful if they build on Mississippi high school players. Show your work. Because when has that ever worked? And I would say the same thing about Mississippi State. This applies to both of them. If you recruit like Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, you're going to lose to them. There are dynamics in this state that work against both programs in this state. There aren't that many people. There's money issues. You can't do an NIL what Texas A&M is able to do in NIL now. Ole Miss has a collective that's doing really good stuff, but it will not be enough to recruit high school players like A&M. If you do the build with just high school players, the 3-star projects from Louisville or whatever, you're going to lose. You want to know how I know that? Because you've always lost to the big boys in college football. In recent history, you have been nationally competitive a handful of times. One, Eli Manning was your quarterback. The next time was Hugh Freeze, who built his team really centered around Laramie Tunsil from Florida, Robert Kimdichie from Georgia, Laquan Treadwell from Illinois. Last year's Ole Miss team, the defense carried the team the last half of the year with transfer Chance Campbell, transfer Otis Reese, transfer Jake Springer. Even Sam Williams didn't sign with Ole Miss out of high school. You have to be different if you want to win at a high level here in Mississippi. You can't do Alabama and beat Alabama. You have to do something different. So will this work? We don't know. I mean, this is just the second year of the transfer portal. But this isn't a 3-star project defensive end. You know he was out of high school. He goes to college, produces in college. Now you get him. This is how you can play with Texas A&M and Alabama and Georgia. This is how you can do it. Getting guys that have produced at the Power 5 level without having to take flyers on every 3-star project that you can get to fill a class. You still sign some of those guys. They did, 17 of them. But if you want to actually level the playing field, you have to be different. And this is different. Will it work? I don't know. But at least they're trying something a little bit unconventional, because doing it the way the big boys in the SEC do it will lead to losses, and I've got decades of sample size to prove it to you.
And State is kind of doing the same thing, but not in recruiting. Their thing is what they're doing on the field. They have decided to, instead of, doing sort of the same spread zone read look that most teams are giving you, they're going to go completely the other way. They're going to air raid you to death. They're not going to run the ball very much, and they're going to see if they can come up with a scheme that provides an advantage. 2 years in, it's still very much a work in progress, and you're certainly not any closer to beating the top dog of the conference. Alabama has dominated you these 2 years, but they did get better throughout the year, and they continue to add talent, and we'll see where it takes them.
To win at a place that is not a traditional power takes doing something different, because there's a reason you're not a traditional power, right? So traditional powers are going to use the transfer portal selectively, and at times they'll load up, but it's a special circumstance. Alabama has shown us under Nick Saban, they're going to use the transfer portal selectively. They're going to identify a position or two of need and then go grab the best player available in the entire country. And there's not a lot you can do about it if Alabama wants that player. Jamison Williams coming in and being the impact player that he was for the Crimson Tide last year. Georgia may do that. LSU in this particular year went with 13 transfer portal guys and 15 high school recruits. LSU's probably going to balance that out. In the future, they probably won't go 13 through the transfer portal. Southern Cal was heavy in the transfer portal this year. They won't be year in, year out, because they're going to build through elite high school players. We'll be right back. Time to unlimit your data with $45 unlimited, only from prepaid by C Spire. Get unlimited on C Spire's nationwide 5G network for just $45 with autopay. No credit checks, no hidden fees. Learn more at cspire.com/prepaid. Let's talk about C Spire for a second. As it pertains to the conversation about the transfer portal and being unique. So, C Spire is an incredibly successful Mississippi-based company that has grown into a multi-pronged technology company. What started as bag phones that plugged into the cigarette lighter in your car has evolved into cloud computing and business IT services and things that I know a lot about C Spire, things that C Spire does that I don't even know about, kind of like in their business services group. And oh, by the way, they still do phones and they do them really well. But C Spire does not have the same resources as a company that some of the massive national brands have, right? You know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to call their names out. They're not partners on the show. I'm not going to call out their names. They don't have the same marketing budget that some of those national brands have. They don't have the same R&D budget. And so C Spire, to compete with national brands, had to be different. So what did they do? First, they focused on their footprint, Mississippi and just beyond its borders. And even as they've grown into other business spaces, they focused on their footprint into Alabama, into Tennessee, into the Florida panhandle, dabbling over in East Texas, into Louisiana, into Arkansas. C Spire's not trying to compete with Google and its cloud computing solutions in Seattle. That doesn't make any sense. They know where their core is, and they've stuck to those values as a company. And so it has allowed them to be competitive regionally with national brands, and in a lot of cases to be significantly better than brands that are 10x or 100x their size in terms of budget and company size. And it's always cool to watch a company learn to compete in a space where they're initially scoffed at. It's just, it's just a little guy, they don't matter. And then to say to those big guys along the way, no, we're not selling to you. We're good. We know who we are. We're fine with who we are. So how does that relate to what we're talking about? If you're Mississippi State with the air raid offense, you say, we got to do something a little bit different. And we're going to focus on what we do and what we do well, and we're going to do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And if we stick to that plan, we believe it's going to work because there are results that are proven that it's going to work. At what level is that going to work? Is it going to work at a national championship level? Don't know. There's only one way to find out, and that's to really stick with the plan and see it all the way through. Well, Lane Kiffin has told you that he's going to manage his roster at Ole Miss more like a professional roster. From the day he was hired, he started using the phrase roster management.
And free agency.
Those were new phrases and buzzwords in college football, and then people have consistently said, well, you can't sustain a program through the transfer portal. Well, how do we know? Transfer portal hasn't been around long enough to know whether a program is sustainable. Here's what we know. We've got a 1-year sample size of the ability to bring in transfers. And we've got 2 programs last year that showed that winning in the transfer portal equates to winning on the field. Ole Miss is one of them. They went 10-2 in the regular season. I know they got beat in the Sugar Bowl. Most successful season, regular season in school history. You guys know who the other one is, don't you? It's Michigan State. Mel Tucker and Michigan State adopted a strategy of we're going to get guys that are proven in the transfer portal, and we're going to be competitive today. Michigan State was down as a program when Mark D'Antonio left and Mel Tucker came in. And they've rebounded remarkably in just 2 years under Mel Tucker.
For what it's worth, they have a top 10 transfer class again this year. Fewer players, 7 of them, but still.
So again, I go back to the idea of the big national programs. Southern Cal hit the transfer portal hard this year. You know why? Because their roster was garbage. And Lincoln Riley was looking for a quick fix to be competitive immediately while figuring out his recruiting strategy to make Matter Day and others in Southern California that produce elite athletes a pipeline to Southern Cal once again. Southern Cal is not going to live in the transfer portal the way they did this year. Alabama's never going to live in the transfer portal. Neither is Georgia, neither is Texas A&M. They're going to be selective. But Ole Miss, all by itself, is not able to recruit the way that Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, or LSU. LSU this year, really, really active in the transfer portal. Brian Kelly has said, we're not going to do this every year because LSU is a national brand that's got the ability to recruit elite high school players year after year, load their class up with 4- and 5-star players. So how do you narrow the gap? You do something different. And you guys have heard me say this before with regard to offense under Lane Kiffin. I'm just going to kind of give him we don't know exactly what they're going to be offensively in a given year at a position group, but I'm going to give Lane Kiffin the benefit of the doubt until he isn't productive offensively. Because he has been everywhere he's been with different types of players and different types of schemes. I'm kind of going to give Lane Kiffin the benefit of the doubt on Ole Miss is going to manage its roster through the transfer portal on an ongoing basis until it proves it doesn't work. It's a really fascinating concept. And I don't understand the people that say, well, you can't do this every year. Well, why not? Why can't you do it every year?
Got to do something.
Why can't you go cherry pick a dozen to 16 high school players that you really, really like for your system and bring them in, and then bring in a dozen to 15 transfer portal players that have already proved that they can perform on the field? And it can be a mix, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be guys that are leaving Alabama or Georgia. It can be guys that are leaving Western Kentucky and Iowa State and TCU and Maryland and Navy and Georgia.
Yeah.
Like you got with Otis Reese a couple of years ago.
And, some people say, oh, it's risky. Well, recruiting 3-stars is risky. Your hit rate, I promise you, on high school 3-star is less. I promise this is going to work out like this. Your hit rate on high school 3-star is worse than portal player. I promise you. Because high school 3-star hadn't developed into his body yet. You don't know if he can play at Power 5 level. Transfer guy, you know. And for whatever it's worth, Michigan State's doing exactly what you're talking about. So it's not just Ole Miss. Their transfers are coming in from Illinois, Florida, Wisconsin, UNLV, Mississippi State, Colorado, Georgia.
Yeah. And Mississippi State has successfully used the transfer portal, but to a lesser degree.
Mm-hmm. And if you're Michigan State and you need a linebacker, who would you rather sign? The 3-star from Lansing that's been tackling 16-year-olds that run 5.2s? Or Aaron Brule, who you know can play in the SEC?
Yeah.